Hello, Stellar people, and welcome back to the channel where we will continue this month of ink practice. Last week, or the weeks prior, we went over and tested our materials on these characters. Beautiful Beast Kiss on the far left and Demon Cat on the far right. But now let's get into some art study with how to draw comics the Marvel way. And weeks prior, I talked about doing Captain America and Doctor Doom, and we are going to do that today. So I started off with finding the artwork that I wanted to make copies of, and I made copies of them, printed those out, and now we have a base to work off of. We have Captain America and Average Joe, we have Doctor Doom, but also I was looking at other things like this Chapter 5 Thor image. I think that would be a really good one. I like the dynamic pose. And the Chapter 9, this action sequence with Thor and a whole bunch of cool characters. And I thought, let's try to ink this for practice. And so now that we have this something to work off of, we can begin. Now to start, I'm going to start with these three right here, Captain America, Average Joe, and Doctor Doom. Is a great place to start. Now to begin, I wanted to not use a light table because I fear there's a bit of a glare. So I transferred it down to Strathmore rough, or I think this is smooth, paper, and I got it down with red pencil just so I know where my lines are and some indication of where the inks will go. Then I give it a little check to see if I have all the elements that I need, and then tighten those little areas up before doing some actual inking. Then I do the same for Doctor Doom and Average Joe. Now to start, it's always good to practice. And by practice, in the very, very beginning, just warm up, just get loose, try to figure out how you're going to do it. Is there any special thing you want to learn? Is there any techniques you want to try out? I try to think about that all just before not just before I start, but before I start. And Average Joe seemed like a good place to start, just to get myself warmed up and loose and to figure out all the things I want to try with Captain America and Doctor Doom later. This Average Joe guy is one of the best places to start because he's much less complex and just fairly basic. So that's good for practice or to get warmed up. So after I've worked off my early jitters, now it's time for the main event of Captain America and Doctor Doom. I have the total outlines and I'm ready to begin some inking. I have one of my newer brush pens. I think it's a Cambio, or that's what I'm calling it. And I usually work from upper left to lower right, upper left to lower right, so that I'm not dragging my hand through wet ink. I try to do mostly the outlines and with most of the details, but I take a pause and then I check it later just to make sure I have all the elements that I need for the final inks. And I usually end with the spot blacks at the very end. Now all three of these images are from the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, drawn by John Buscema, a delightful artist. He's really, really good. Especially with Captain America, I believe. But almost all of his ones are good. But drawing from the masters is a great way to learn. And that is what I'm using this as, an opportunity to learn by using masterworks to learn either, well, whatever you want to learn. In this, I'm trying to learn how to ink, because I feel like I've sort of stagnated, or I'm doing the same things that I almost always do. It's like a routine. Now, a routine can be great. A routine can have a process in place that if you don't know what to do, or like a standard procedure that you know will faithfully work for you, can be a great thing. But I think maybe I've gotten into a rut with my routine, and I like to evolve past it. And so that's why I'm trying to do some master works or master studies in inking to try to get better, maybe pick up something new and maybe add it to my existing processes, but we'll see how this all goes. Now, inking usually isn't as mentally taxing as drawing. Usually, I don't know why I expend more mental juice on drawing than inking, which I find more relaxing, but still, by the end, I'm usually pretty kind of wiped, or at least I need to walk away from the art table. And so I usually use this time, once I'm done, I look it over, and then I step away and then see what else I can do when I come back with fresh eyes. Now, after the break, I come back, look at it, and see where my groupings of spot blacks are. And once I have identified those, I get to it. Now, spot blacks are the areas of darkest blacks, and usually they're pulled in certain areas to give more definition to the character, which is just a two-dimensional image, to make it simulate 3D or an actual figure. So that it's already pretty much blocked in for me, the darker areas, but I'm not the most confident of inkers yet. And so I try to figure out, okay, how am I exactly going to do this? Cross-hatching larger grouped areas of inks, whatever I can think of. Are you going to use a pen, a brush, or mechanical pencils to achieve the effects that you want? And I try to keep that all in mind as I put in the spot blacks. Now, being a comic book reading teen in my past, I was always amazed by the artistry of comics and how they were really good at anatomy and perspective and just drawing that superhero figure in pose. It was just amazing to me when I was younger. And so this is pretty cool to, be looking at the art and then trying to learn from it in depth. I've always been doing these things since I was a teen, trying to break down what other artists did. But now that I kind of, you understand more about art and how it's made, and it's still cool. And after we're done, we check it over to see if we have all the major bits and bobs. This is just for practice and for study's sake, so I'm not too bothered, but I think it looks pretty good. And that was Captain America. And now let's move on to Doctor Doom. Now for Doctor Doom, the process is pretty much the same. I have this Tachikawa brush pen. Give it a little shake. I have the Doctor Doom image in pencil down onto Strathmore Smooth, and we're ready to go. Now, one of the things I really liked about comics, well, I still like them today, is the dynamic poses and the exaggerated figures, either proportions and movements. Nothing is just static or plain. Everything is exaggerated for drama. And that's what I really like about this John Buscema drawing of Doctor Doom, who is usually calm and collected, but in this pose, I really like this pose. Now, something to note about this Doctor Doom image is that it's more complex than the Captain America. They're both complex, but in different ways. This is the shininess of armor, which I have always had a hard time grasping, especially in ink. So the armor and how to ink armor is a focus of mine for this piece. I also talked about earlier that I like to work in threes, and I feel that threes are a great, it's partially the repetition, 1, 2, 3, and then I usually try to do my own thing within a certain style or to get out everything that I've just learned so that I can try to put it, into my toolkit or into my brain to get the memory down. And so I always try to break things down into threes. So Average Joe, Captain America, and now Doctor Doom. And usually the simplest one I try to do first, just to get that under the belt, and then moved on to more and more complex things, leaving Doctor Doom for last, being the most complex of the three. And with a special note on how to draw armor or how to ink armor, which shall be interesting, whether I can get it. I like that face. Well, Dr. Doom's just cool. That metal face, right? Partially crazed, partially cool, and all Dr. Doom. Now, in the making of this, I realized that there's a lot of fine lines, but I also try to figure out what makes characters dynamic. These are just musings of mine. Like, what makes Doctor Doom so appealing to me? And I'm thinking, is it, he has an armor, and yet over that he has a cape and a cowl. His colors are, that steel gray and the green. I don't know. There's something appealing about Doctor Doom that I can't quite place. And I'm trying to figure it out as I draw this, because there's no real better way to, figure out characters as when you're drawing or inking them. I don't know. I always liked the look of Doctor Doom. And this cloth over this armor. So there's a lot of fine lines, which must make him a menace to draw, but it's a really cool design. But there are so many fine lines on this character of Doctor Doom that I had a thought to maybe try out doing just mechanical pencils for the line work. But I like to try different tools in different situations just to see what effects can be applied. That what would that do to an image? What would that do to metal if it's all drawn with the like a pen, while the cloth may be drawn with a brush pen or an actual real pen or brush? How does that affect the look? So these are all experiments one can think about trying in the future. Now, one thing to note is that I did, I think, all of these in one day. And by the end, which is partially the problem, if you do sets of 3, that at the end I was pretty fatigued. And when I'm fatigued, I start to move quicker. And, because you're trying to work through it, but also the mistakes can also go up. So that's why I try to pace myself and do one thing on different days. But sometimes you have no choice and you have to get it done, and you're pushing yourself past some reasonable limits. So I try to space it out just a little bit more because I was really rushing towards the end. But that is Doctor Doom. So after letting it sit for a day and recuperating, getting my energy back, now it's time for the spot blacks. And I was mostly interested in getting this metal look down with ink. And so that's what I tried to take careful attention to, just to see how it has been done so that hopefully I can replicate it. Now I'm going to need a lot more practice, and I think doing the 3 repetition of 3s, maybe doing more armored people like Iron Man or someone else to try to get that down and try to figure out how other artists can do the same subject in a different style, and what are commonalities, what are repeating patterns in artistry of inking armor. I think that would be interesting to figure out. But this is much like what I did for Captain America. Certain areas are thicker and more detailed, and I try to keep it within reason because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing. But it's good to have a guide or something to study off of, such as this Doom piece. I still don't know exactly how his mouth works. Like, what is that? It's something that over his lips that he speaks through. It makes his voice slightly robot-like. I was gonna say robotized, but that's not really a word. But yeah. This was really interesting to do, and I think I learned a lot from it. And, some things I can still need practice with, try to add it to what I do. But it's always good to learn something new and stuff that you haven't really done before. That's always fun. So one thing I am noticing is that the spot blacks on Dr. Doom are fairly, there's minimal, I guess. And I'm thinking that maybe is what makes those light, delicate lines of the armor, the cape and cowl and all that. It's a good contrast. But I don't know. Just some thoughts. I'm trying to figure this out as I go. So I'm just musing to myself. But yeah, this is... But another thing that I'm just noticing is that different eras, artists have different styles or different looks. Like this is, I think, closer to Jack King Kirby's than modern comic book artists, but eras, man. Nothing stays the same, but this is classic. This is beautiful. And that is Dr. Doom. The printout and the freshly inked by myself. And I really like this process of trying to figure out inking by practicing. Using masterworks, in this case, Dr. Doom, Captain America, and Average Joe Guy by John Buscema. I like that armor. I'm still amazed at how they did it. I think I missed that knee. Right? Anyways, thank you for joining me on this studying ink practice session of drawing the Marvel way and John Buscema's work. I have been Trey. You can find my work at treyhodges.com. And I will see you on the next episode. We'll continue practicing inks. Thank you. Take care. Keep shining. Bye-bye.